and go back to your case study, Leah, and maybe just think of questions like, you know, what was the context that what were you presented? You know, this often happens. We get a client and they have an idea of how they want to proceed, and then how you sort of worked around the limitations, so to speak, and what how you felt you maybe helped them accomplish the strategic part. So over to you.
Sure. So I'd say the constraints that I had to work within were certainly the time of the organization. You know, they really they had limited time to spend on this, and admittedly, I started the process with them before I had done the technology participation training in strategic planning. So had I done that training, I probably would have suggested gently to, you know, expand on the time, but that was the limitation we were working with. The other limitation was, you know, not being able to have the staff and the board members together. So they had the staff meeting in the morning for a 4-hour session, and then the board meeting in the afternoon. So the question in my mind was, how could I act as that bridge to bring, you know, the insights that were generated by the staff and honor what they had come up with and bring it to the committee, or sorry, the board in the afternoon. So, and, you know, I couldn't possibly go through all 5 of those, you know, steps in 4-hour chunks, unfortunately. So we did, you know, quite rapidly cycle through, you know, the environmental scan. We did do some practical visioning, which was very positive. You know, we used the victory circle process that Barb has taught us, and did lightly touched on underlying contradictions through, you know, discussing some of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Mostly those weaknesses and threats kind of brought to the surface what might be limiting the group. So again, we didn't go to the depth that we could have for a really transformational plan, but we did, by bringing up those, you know, those threats and weaknesses, we did identify some things that were on the horizon the group wanted to keep in mind and be aware of. And then the morning group got into developing their vision of the directions the organization needed to go in. So what I did the same activities online with the afternoon group. This was all online. But what I did at every juncture point, I presented what the morning group had done, and I said, what do you see? So looking, you know, talking to the board members, what do you see and what the staff have identified here? Giving them opportunities to look at it, ponder it, find meaning in it. So I asked them to reflect on what was most meaningful in that information. I delivered the practical vision elements that the staff had come up with, brought them to the board, stressing that it wasn't the board's goal to have to mash everything together, but rather to just be aware, like, this is critical information that the staff is telling you about. Do you need to make any adjustments in what you see? And then if I could just like flog that metaphor of a water trip, I sort of use the idea of, you know, everyone on a ship has different vantage points. So we want to take into account, you know, the staff have a very unique vantage point of the organization. So let's use that information so that wherever you are as a board, you know, you can make meaningful decisions. So, and then finally, when we got to the directions that the board had set, again, I presented the directions that the staff had generated, and we ran out of time, not surprisingly, but what I've presented to the group to carry on with is to map them against one another. Again, not to force you know, they have to be put together, but remarkably, there was a lot of alignment that I could see already. And so where there maybe wasn't alignment, it was a chance for the board to decide, okay, do we need to adjust a little bit, or is this something that, you know, we've considered in different ways? So I would say where we had to, you know, let go of the strict top strategic planning steps, we didn't get down to that action planning step. That's for the group to do on its own. And we didn't go as deep, certainly, as we could have with the contradictions. but the group was very satisfied with what they accomplished out of the process, out of the morning and the afternoon. They have a sense of where they want to go. And for me, I felt heartened to see that transfer of knowledge did happen, that this what the staff had presented was heard by the board and taken into account. So yeah, it was a briskly paced process, but we got it done in a happy way, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah. And what's coming to me, Leah, is the strategy part of it was actually having the board here, like literally from the morning, like that same day. This is what staff is thinking, and so the strategy of bringing those two pieces together, I think, is probably the catalytic part for what you did.
Absolutely, it was really important for the board to hear what the staff had said. And also we used one other new piece in the environmental scan was we used personas to look at different members that might engage with the organization and what they might need. So that was another way for the board to connect with, who's using this organization, how do they need to use it. So yeah.
I really wanted you to share a little bit more about personas. How did you use that and how did it help? What did it look like?
Yeah, so that was a decision made in part because the board, there were quite a number of new board members to the organization I was working with. And so there was just a desire to really support them in understanding the type of people who are using the services of the organization. So before the session, I worked with the staff to develop 8 personas. So these sort of mock people with photographs who were using the organization's services. In fact, 5 of them were users and 3 of them were not engaging with the organization, because that was also important. They said, we want to also investigate, there are lots of people who are not using our services, so what's going on there? So that was really helpful to get the staff's perspective on who they're working with. In a perfect world, we would have had enough time to have focus groups and have people, actual users come in, but the personas were a good proxy. And then they were presented to the board to look at what are the explicit and implicit needs that are reflected in what these personas, the information about them. So the board analyzed them and created lists of here's what their needs are very clearly stated, and these are the ones that aren't so clearly stated, but we can infer based on, maybe where they're located in the province, maybe their type of, the work that they're doing. And it brought forward the question, is there a difference in needs between the folks who are using these services and those who aren't using the services? And that really provoked, no, not really, not a difference in needs. So the question then is, well, why then? Why are some, if we're able to serve these needs, why are some not engaging? And I think that informed some of the strategies they eventually arrived at in terms of, promotion and outreach and engagement. I think those personas could certainly be used again, when they get a little further on in their action planning, to go back and say, okay, picking up, this persona, would they engage with our organization given what we've developed as a plan? So they were useful in the session, those personas, but they will, I think, serve a further purpose down the line.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much.